Welcome back to Sawbones Barbecue. I'm your host Sawbones, and with me on the camera as always, Todd. A quick editorial note, I got some questions after our first video about why I would call him such a thing, and I had to think about that for a minute. It's a nickname he's had for a while at work. Aside from being an experienced videographer, Todd is also a surgical technologist. That's his second career, so that's actually how we know each other. We work together, and when he was new on the job, I think it's fair to say he was a little bit nervous. Todd, do you concur?
You're right, you're absolutely right.
Kind of a little bit scared of me, which is weird because I'm not that crazy of a guy as far as surgeons go, but he was definitely nervous. So I mean, I think the right thing to do would have been to be kind and welcoming and nice and reassuring, but that's not what I did. I decided to have a little fun with it. So when he came into the rooms, you know, I would pretend I didn't notice him. He would be giving someone a break or a lunch and come up to the table. And then when I would turn for an instrument, I would go, "F***ing Todd, who let this guy in here? Jeez, how am I supposed to do this case?" So I was just kind of getting his goat, and you know, he thought it was serious for the longest while, and now we've been friends for a couple of years, so now he knows it was all in good fun. But the name kind of stuck, so when he comes in the room, you know, people will say, "Oh, fucking Todd." So anyway, just so he doesn't have to keep bleeping in our future videos, I'm going to shorten his name to FT. But anyway, now it's on the record why we call him Todd, and I will leave it at that. So on with today's cook. We're doing ribeye steaks today. Lots of different kinds of ribeyes out there. There's big fancy tomahawk ribeyes, which are double thick with a super long bone, you know, steakhouse style. There's cowboy ribeyes, which are kind of the same thing, but with a short little bone on them. There's traditional ribeyes, boneless with the cap and the eye together, etc., etc. What we're gonna do today is an eye of ribeye. So that's the center part of the ribeye steak with the cap removed from it. These are really nice, even cooking. They're totally delicious and really easy to do. So we're gonna do eye of ribeye steaks. I got these ones from Snake River Farms, which is kind of my favorite source of beef these days. But the technique we're gonna do today applies to, you know, whatever kind of ribeye you like. So get what's accessible to you, get what's within your budget. It doesn't have to be Snake River Farms, but these happen to be one of my favorite steaks, so that's what we're gonna do today. So the first step is we gotta salt them and let them sit with the salt for a little while before we're ready to get on with our final seasoning and cooking. So to do that, I put just the teeniest little dab of olive oil on the steaks. They don't need a ton. It's just to kind of make the salt stick a little bit. So we'll get some oil on there. It doesn't need to be an excessive amount of oil, just enough to kind of get them slipping around on the plate a little bit. And this next bit's important. The kind of salt you use matters. If it didn't matter, I'd be the first one to tell you. If you use table salt, like just regular, you know, I got a giant bin of it at the grocery store, they're gonna be way too salty. This is a really fine grained salt and has so much surface area, it's gonna absorb really aggressively. So if you use table salt, your meat's gonna be too salty, you're gonna ruin it. So don't do that. What you need is a really nice flaky sea salt to do this. And if you don't have that, I would skip this step. But table salt's not a good substitute. So this salt we're gonna use today is from Jacobsen Salt Company, which is my favorite source of salt these days. And you can sprinkle on a fairly generous amount here. So it just kind of looks like the steaks are getting snowed on a little bit. And I mean, you could overdo it, I suppose, but all this is gonna get rinsed off in a little while anyway. So you wanna err on the side of being a little too generous, not too chintzy with the salt. So we get a nice little snowflake coating on them like so. That guy's done. We'll do a little bit on this one. These are nice thick steaks, so they need a little bit on the edges too, which is what I'm doing right now. And then you can kind of flop them around on the plate a little bit to roll them in any excess that sprinkled off on the plate. Just kind of pat them around a little bit, get a nice salt coating. And then when you've got them salted how you like them, we'll just throw a little piece of saran wrap on there and let them sit for a little while. You know, I'd say maximum an hour. You know, you don't want to go beyond that or you're going to get it a little bit too salty, and maybe minimum 20 to 30 minutes. So you can kind of adjust that to taste, and part of it depends on what you're going to use to season them next. The seasoning I'm going to use today has some salt in it. So after we do this stage, we're actually going to rinse them so we don't have an excess of salt, and then reapply the next seasoning. So for now, these are salted and they're ready to rest. We'll come back in 30, maybe 45 minutes and we'll check on them. Okay, we're back with the ribeyes. They've been sitting with the nice flaky sea salt for about half an hour. We did rinse that salt off. You definitely don't want to get an excess of salt on there. So that phase of salting is just to draw out some of the water from the steak and get a little bit of salt flavor in. But I don't use that as the final seasoning. You certainly can if you want to. You can leave the salt on there, just add some cracked pepper, throw it on and call it a salt and pepper crusted steak. I find that they get too salty if you do that. It's too much of a good thing. So I rinse and repeat, but instead of using that salt, I'm gonna use a seasoned salt instead. This is also from Jacobsen. This is their steak seasoning salt. It's got sea salt, minced garlic, coriander, paprika, fennel seed, rosemary, black pepper, red pepper, thyme, and parsley. So you got a nice little seasoning mix, and the salt is in this, so you don't need to resalt the steaks. You certainly wouldn't want to use both of these at the same time. So they've been rinsed, patted, re-oiled, and now we're gonna sprinkle some of this nice seasoning on there. And this gets our salt, our pepper, and some herb flavor too, which is gonna be really nice. Get a nice thin coating on all sides, and then you can kind of roll them around on the plate to get a little bit of that excess so you're not wasting it. A little bit on all sides, and then just kind of roll them around a little bit and get that extra stuff. And kind of adjust to taste. There definitely is too much of a good thing if you really coat them as densely as you can, so I go for kind of a medium, not sparse, but kind of a medium thick coating of the salt. And then those are ready to go on the smoker. Our usual disclaimer applies. Yes, we're cooking in a garage. We have our CO detector. We're at 9 parts per million, which is safe. And we have, you can't see on the camera, but we have garage doors wide open. So we have good ventilation, but beware of using a smoker indoors, not a good idea. Okay, so we have our ribeyes ready to go. Today, in terms of equipment, we're cooking on the Yoder. This is the YS640S. This is my current favorite smoker. I've been using a Traeger for years with great success. But one thing that the Yoder offers, which is really good, is a little trap door in the heat diffuser plate, which allows us to get direct fire. And that's gonna come into place when we sear the steaks. So today's technique is the so-called reverse sear. We're gonna cook the steak most of the way, all the way up to 120, 125 degrees, and then we're gonna finish it with a sear. So the smoking comes first, the searing comes second. And the Yoder allows us to do both of those on the same piece of equipment. I used to smoke the steak on a smoker and then run out to a gas grill to try to sear it, or do it on a cast iron in the stove, and that's okay, but the Yoder allows us to do it all in one machine, which is really nice. We're gonna use the Meter wireless probes. One word of caution, these probes are only rated up to 500 degrees. When we get to the searing portion, we're gonna go a little hotter than that. So what we'll likely do is remove those probes and then just test the meat by hand if needed. But if you have a meter, you don't want to go above 500 degrees with those probes. You get a big red alert warning and it makes a horrible noise. It sounds like a nuclear meltdown. So keep your meter probes away from anything over 500 degrees. Without further ado, let's get them on the smoker and get cooking. The Yoder has a little bit of a right to left gradient. It's a little hotter on the right than it is on the left. So I try to put the steaks in an even position as far as where they are right to left wise, and I try to put thicker ends of the meat towards the right if possible. Doesn't make a huge difference, and you can always move them around mid-cook, but this is a nice way to get these set up for smoking. And the other piece of equipment worth mentioning are these grill grates. These don't come with a Yoder. These are an accessory you can add on. I think the website's grillgrates.com. And these aluminum grill grates are a must-have accessory. They're not specific to Yoder. They have different shapes and sizes you can use on different types of grills, but these are a must-have for the Yoder. They're really good for searing. So we're gonna leave them on there for now, and then when we get to the part where we sear the steaks, we'll be seeing more of those later. So for now, we're gonna close it up and we're gonna smoke those steaks till we get up to about 120 to 125 degrees. We're back for the second phase of the cook. The ribeyes have been smoking for just a little bit over an hour, and our temperature's in the low 120s. One of them is 122, the other one's 124. So that's way, way rare, but it's a perfect temperature to stop before we sear them. And then they're gonna end up around 135 to 140 when we're done. So when they come off, they're gonna have a nice little red color to them from the smoke. They're looking pretty good. And we'll just set them aside. And I like to cover them with foil so we don't lose too much heat while we're moving to the next phase of the cook. So we'll get those off, put them to bed for a minute with a little foil on there. And now what we want to do is move to our searing. I'm going to throw on a glove so I don't burn my hand on the hot metal. These are our grill grates that we're going to sear on. And then The key feature to the Yoder that I really like is this little trap door in here. The heat diffuser plate has a square right over the firebox here. So I take the panel off and now we have the firebox exposed there. And I'll just bring the grill grates in right over top of it and let those start heating up. And we're going to turn up our temperature now to 450. That temperature is fairly arbitrary. That does not reflect the actual searing temperature for the steak. So in order to check that, what we do is use this little infrared temp gun to check what the actual surface of the grill grates is. Right now they're 220 degrees, which is not nearly hot enough to sear. So we're going to close this. Actually, I'm going to get that grate out of the way first, and then we'll close it. And we're going to let that get to a nice hot searing temperature. So I'll pull out the grate we were smoking on and just leave the grill grates there and get them nice and hot. I usually do the searing around maybe 600 to 650 degrees is about as high as you want to go. That'll put a really nice crust on the meat, and it'll only take about 1.5 to 2 minutes per side to get them seared. So we're going to wait a minute while that heats up. And again, the important point is the temperature the smoker tells you, the ambient temperature inside the smoker, does not reflect the temperature we're actually searing at. So we have to have a little infrared temp gun to check that. That's important. So we'll come back in a minute when it's hot and we'll get the steak seared. Temperature of the cooker's up in the 500, so we're going to check the grates. They'll probably be 650 plus. Yep, we're at 665 right in the hot spot there, so that's oodles of temperature. So we're going to go ahead and put these on for about 2 minutes aside. I'm not going to put them right on the hottest spot. Space them just a little bit away from the flame. And a little bit off center from the flame on either side. And then we'll give those about 2 minutes. I'll start a timer. And then we'll come back in 2 minutes and flip them over. We have a lot of heat and smoke coming out, so you don't want to get too close in there. Put some nice little grill marks on there. If you want to get fancy, you can do 1 minute, then turn them 45 degrees and do another minute, put little crisscross grill marks on there, if that's your thing. But you can see those grates put a really nice grill mark on there. And our grate temperature is still in the mid 500s, which is really nice. So we'll give these 2 minutes on this side and then they should be ready to rest. Okay, that's been 2 minutes on the second side, so we're going to pull these off and get them ready to rest. And I took those meter probes out so as not to overheat them because they get a little unhappy when they go above 500. But you can always stop and do a quick check just with an instant read. And we don't want to be at our finishing temperature yet. They're going to keep coming up. So this one's at 128, 130, and this one's the same, 128, 129. So that's a little bit on the rare side. However, the temperature is still coming up. So we're going to rest these steaks for at least 5 or 10 minutes, and that temperature is going to come up to the 135 to 140 range, which is a really nice finishing temp for medium rare. So these are done. They look great. I'm going to just foil them up and let them rest for a few minutes. And then we'll go inside and heat them up. The steaks are done. They've been resting for about 10 minutes, and the temperature will have come up a little bit in the meantime, so we'll recheck them. I'll go right in the center. This one's at 135. 136, which is really nice medium rare. And this one is 134, 135. So we're good on the temperature and we are ready to cut them. All right, let's cut into these and see how we did. You can see a little bit of the smoke ring around the edge there, which is a nice difference of doing them wood fired instead of just on a pan. And you don't have to slice these like this. You can just throw them on the plate whole, but it's kind of fun to slice them up and serve them this way sometimes. And I like to serve these with my homemade chimichurri sauce, which is my favorite steak condiment. So we're going to get some of that going and get our side dish, and we should be about ready to enjoy these. And I can never resist at this moment trying a little end bite. Just, you know, quality control, got to have a taste. Excellent. All right, we're all finished up here. The steaks are sliced and served. We came out with a really nice medium rare temperature. And I'm serving this with my homemade chimichurri sauce. And for a side, we have some Brussels sprouts with a little prosciutto and Parmesan. And it looks good. We are ready to eat. We got 2 plates here, one for me, and of course one for FT. He's kind enough to work for food, so his videography skills will be compensated with a nice ribeye here, and we're ready to eat. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back again soon with more videos. If you like what you saw today, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more.